in order to have any sustainable achievement, you have to shift from the hustle culture, number one. The first step to me is realizing that rest is not the enemy of success, honey. It's a prerequisite, number one.
Hey guys, editing Hayden jumping in here just to let you know that my audio is not as high quality as normal in this episode. For whatever reason, when I was recording, I was speaking into my mic and it was plugged in, but it was not working. So I think you'll still get a ton out of this episode, but just wanted to let you guys know. All right, hello guys. Welcome back to the Evergreen Rx. I'm your host Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. And I am so excited to welcome today's guest, LaKisha Mosley. She is an event planner and a mental health advocate who is all about creating meaningful connections, which we're huge about in this community. She is a founder of Mind Your Business, which is a mental health collective dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs through safe, empowering spaces. And she balances her creativity with a compassion and passionate energy for building those environments where people can thrive, connect, and feel truly seen, which is such an amazing thing to do and such an important space to create. So I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Hayden, number one, for just your amazing podcast to give space for people who are struggling or may feel like they're not okay when they really are. It's just we have other strategies and tips. So thank you, number one, for even creating space for people. But number two, for inviting me is definitely an honor.
Yes, I feel so honored to have you. And I'm so excited to talk today all about balancing professional success with personal well being. I really want to kind of look at how we can redefine productivity through that lens and discuss the importance of being able to define what success looks like on your own terms, kind of from a holistic viewpoint. And also, maybe talk about some practical strategies for balancing ambitious career goals that so many of us have with also mental health and sustainable achievement in mind.
Exactly. I love it. This is my jam. This is the perfect conversation. And I think this time of year going into the beginning is the perfect time to talk about those things because we're like hustle hustle, I got to get to it, I got to achieve this, or I got to reset and do all these things. So perfect.
Yeah, it can be so easy to get caught up in that and kind of even forget why we're doing it. And that idea, like, of defining success from a more holistic viewpoint of like success in all areas, our reset or our wellness routine or our career goals we're hitting, those are all just each individual components. And so we wouldn't want one to outbalance the others. So I'm curious if we can just kind of jump in first with like how traditional definitions of productivity tend to lead to more burnout and more feelings of inadequacy, and how we can kind of redefine that and what you think from your viewpoint.
I love this question, number one, because it helps me. I'm a bit of a disruptor. So I get to challenge people who are in this space that feel like, tradition plays a huge part and that's why you're not successful. For one, traditional productivity is really measured by output, like how much we get, we can get done in the shortest amount of time possible. That's normally traditional productivity. But to me, and in my experience, this approach really disregards well being, even creativity and individuality, because it's almost like, this rinse and repeat, everybody's doing the same thing. It really sets an impossible standard where busy is equated to being valuable, which
Mm-hmm.
can lead you to burnout, feeling inadequate, feeling like you just falling short. So what I had to do and what I talk to people about is really redefining productivity. And it really starts with the mindset shift. It's not about doing more, but doing what matters. Yes, it's about doing what matters. So to me, true productivity is really about aligning your actions with your values, your priorities, and your energy. Because all of that is a mindset thing. I feel like when we work on like particular tasks, um, when we work on projects that really move the needle, they really leave space for rest and growth. That's how we create sustainable success, which I'm glad you said. That to me is how we create that sustainable success without sacrificing our well being.
I just absolutely love what you said because I think, I've heard other people in this space kind of talk about like aligning your actions with your values and like thinking, remembering the goal, remembering kind of why you're doing what you're doing. And it's amazing. Like that's exactly like that is very helpful. And sometimes it can also become like really big picture and then you're sitting there like doing your, menial everyday tasks and you're like, why am I doing that? This and then it's like I'm just checking this off. Like this is just what I always do. And I just think, how was it that you said? You said it so perfectly. Like,
More about what matters.
matters.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Doing more of what matters
Yeah.
instead of just focusing on doing more. Because I agree with you. We get this feeling of being like a cog in a machine.
Yes.
And even, like it doesn't matter what field you're in, if you're self employed or if you're
Right.
working for a big company or doing something, it's just, it can lead to this feeling like day in, day out
Yeah.
same thing over and over, and we just have to hit these checkpoints to
Right.
feel like our day was worth it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, when you think about the difference between, because it feels like what we're talking about is productivity versus real success
Right.
and long term health and success,
Mm-hmm.
because what we're doing is what makes up our life. And so, when we're talking about, professional ambitions, things like that, we're
Mm-hmm.
also talking about the things that constitute a life.
Yeah.
And yes, yes. So I'm wondering, like, how do we separate out those things of like success and the larger idea of that, and then like when it gets blended with productivity and those negative things that we're talking about.
For me, and this is another one that's really disruptive when I talk about it for to some people. To me, being productive is really about completing tasks. It's about what you just said, it's checking the box. Whereas to me, success is really about achieving fulfillment, like living this life that really feels meaningful to you.
Mm,
Now, don't get me wrong, productivity can be a tool for that success, but that's not the end goal.
mm,
That's not your end goal.
mhm,
Success is personal. It's really tied to like what we talked about, our values, our goals, our priorities. That could be for you excelling in your career. That could be nurturing relationships, prioritizing your mental health,
mm,
even like carving out this space to have some creative hobbies, if that's what you want to do. So I guess for me, true success is the balance between achieving something and being content with
mm,
that. It's like
mhm.
defining it on your own terms and not about what society feels like you should be doing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really having to hold on to both of those things that seem so
Mhm.
different in a way, contentment and then achievement, which
Right.
inherently means like striving, like
Yes,
keeping in mind that there's more while being happy with where you're at and what
exactly.
you have. And I just think what you said is so genius that productivity is a tool for
Yep,
success.
yep.
But how many other tools are there? I mean, we're talking about like rest. That is a tool
Yes.
or socializing, being
Mhm,
filled up by the people in your life, like
mhm.
that is a tool, getting inspired by others,
Right.
taking that time to take in information and ideas, and then taking that time to protect your space to come up with your
That's
own
right.
ideas.
That's right. And I love that you said there's a combination of things. To me, rest is non-negotiable. It's a non-negotiable in any setting. However, it is a tool you use in your business, at work, whatever. There has to be cutoff times. Even with socializing, you have to know when your social media is full and you need
Mhm.
to go be by yourself and
Mhm.
rejuvenate and do those things. But you also have to know that sometimes isolation is not good. Okay,
Mhm.
you have to get out and you have to socialize and you have to fill that meter back up again because sometimes those are the motivators that really help you get to this level of success that you say you want.
Mhm. I think it's so funny that as humans, like, we have to sleep a certain amount of time. I mean, people can really stretch on how much, sleep they actually end up
Right.
getting, but, like, you're gonna really start to run into problems if you're not sleeping at all. And
Exactly.
that's just one form of rest, but it's interesting that, like, that that is completely non-negotiable. That was with us from the day that we're born. That is a
Yeah.
fact of life.
Hmm.
And so look at that. The way that life was created also inherently means that frequently we need to shut down, to rest,
Right.
to slow down. Like that is such a clear example of what we're talking about, that the balance between these two things, the time to be active and then the time to be passive, the time
Right.
to be, just kind of letting the whole system
Right.
slow down or shut off.
Exactly, exactly. And I want people to also think about, the buzzword for a while, and I hear it come back around this time of year, is passive income. Passive
Mhm,
income, passive income.
mhm,
So when you think about creating passive income, there's a period that you're productive, that you're checking the boxes, you're completing the task so that you can do it once and it just repeats
mhm,
on its own. Well, we
mhm,
need to start looking at our success and our productivity the same way. There's a period where I got to work,
mhm,
but still keep rest. I'll keep all my tools in place. But then there's also a time where I'm being very passive and I'm just sitting back and I'm just waiting on what's
yeah,
happening to create whatever that achieving that goal is for that moment. And once that's done, then I may go back to that same cycle again. So we have to look at it that way too, that it's ebbs and flows to this. It's really not this continuum of the
mhm,
same thing. There has to be periods where we stop and we analyze. Because a part of success is also looking at what I've done. How did that measure up?
yeah.
Now, what do I do next?
Yeah, and even, like, what's that return on investment
Yep,
too? Like, sometimes we get so caught up in the check boxes that everything is almost equal
yep,
in value.
mhm,
Me getting my, laundry folded on time is as valuable as me taking the time to sit down and, create something for my podcast.
that's right.
Like, that's how it becomes in my mind too,
Yep,
where it's like everything is urgent, everything is top priority,
right,
everything is weighted the same. And sometimes, like, I think there's a lot of value in understanding, like, each day is different, each week is different. And
right,
some weeks, like, taking that break and folding my laundry and listening to a podcast I really like, that is the more important thing
right,
than the podcast, material I'm creating. And
mhm,
other weeks it's reversed,
right,
because it's never that objectively one is more important than the other.
right,
It's that all of those components come together to kind of keep the wheels turning on our life and keep things kind of moving forward, even if that forward progress looks different in different phases.
exactly, exactly. Oh, I love that you said that. That is perfect.
So I wonder, like, I can clearly tell, like, you're really passionate and ambitious about what you do and the spaces you create for people. And that's not easy work. Like, that's, being such a self starter and creating environments where people can come together. It
Right,
takes a lot. And so, how do you personally, and then maybe how do you kind of help empower people to feel that ambition and want to go after it, especially as women, too? Like, really going after that ambition, but then being able to prioritize other parts of their life when necessary.
right. Yeah, right. I love this question because I do get asked quite often. As someone who lives with high functioning depression, as you know, with that, we don't know when to stop. Like
Mm,
we and our worth, we build our worth around our work. We it's a funny, it's an odd
mm,
thing. But for me, pursuing my ambitious goals, and prioritizing my mental health are not mutually exclusive
Yep.
at all. But I think people feel like it is. It's not. So when I got that understanding, it helped me. Again, that was the mindset shift that I had to do. It really started with me recognizing that I can't pour from an empty cup and that I had to build mental health into my strategy for success.
Mm.
It was
Mhm.
essential. It was
Mhm.
essential for me to build mental health into my
Mhm.
strategy because we all should have or have a strategy. And so that's what I share with people that I talk to and that are coming into my community, that you have to know it's not mutually exclusive, but you also have to when you create your strategy, where is the priority for your mental health? Like,
Mhm.
where does that fit in? So they may look like scheduling regular rest time, mindfulness, journaling, having a tribe, tapping in with that tribe. But it also is going to involve you rethinking how you define ambition. Because again, everything is not set according to society. You have to create your own definitions. Now, I'm not saying go out here and make up something that's just really stupid or just don't make sense. What I'm saying is you have to define, what does ambition look like for you. For me, it doesn't mean pushing myself to the limit.
Yep.
It means that I have to set these very meaningful goals and that I have to be intentional when I approach them.
Yep.
Like, celebrate my progress, not really just my outcome. And I
Mhm.
also have to be able to give myself permission to adapt my goals as my
Mhm.
needs evolve.
Yep. Yes. That's
You have
huge.
to.
What was coming to my mind when you were talking about this is the idea of timing.
Mm-hmm.
That I have a really hard time being very driven and having these ideas and visions for what I want to create, that
Right.
when I decide, when I come to a crossroads and I'm like ready to pivot, and it feels like, no, okay, actually the way I thought things were going to go down, now that I'm further down the path, there actually is a pivot that needs to be
Yes.
done here.
Yep.
I'll get really caught up on like, no, but my vision, like, and why didn't I just do this from the start this way?
Right.
Right? And then
Yep.
I'm like, okay, well, how could I know? How could I have all the insight before anything's been done?
Right.
Like,
Right.
how could I have the hindsight prior to having the
Mm-hmm.
experience?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so really being able to understand, I mean, I think this is challenging like a lot of the
It
cultural
is.
ideas that we get, that, oh, well, that was wasted time, or like, yeah, you should have known, or basically that you should be able to preempt all of your mistakes or
Right.
different directions that you went in before you tried them out. And that's a lot of really strong messaging for sure.
It
And
is.
even what you were saying too about like, living with depression, or anyone living with a diagnosable mental health issue, or even just the general things that we struggle with
Right.
in this very intense, largely oppressive environment that we
Right.
live in. I mean, particularly talking from living in the US, but I think a
Yes.
lot of people feel this all over the world, um, because we have such a productivity centered, you know,
Right.
society. It can feel like, oh shit, if I'm not
That's
as
right.
productive as I was last week, because maybe my anxiety is really flaring up this week and
Yep.
there's all these things going on and there's all these changes in my environment, then how did I misstep? How did I fell off my tools. I fell off my, strategies. I was doing so well, maybe going to therapy or doing my movement practice or
Right.
journaling and meeting all my goals. And
Right.
now, oh God, because maybe some of this stuff is slowing down, maybe I'm not doing as well. I think that's where a
Mm-hmm.
lot of our minds can go, is like, oh shit, I'm not doing as well. Like
Yep.
and then there's that fear, especially with something like depression, with anxiety, like that fear, like, oh, am I just gonna, am I falling off again? Am I
Right.
gonna spiral into something?
Right.
And it's
Right.
actually like, no, that pressure is like the place that we really start to stumble, when we
Exactly.
can bring the compassion, and that's where we can kind of help create a baseline that is easier to manage.
That's true. I love that you said like every single word because I think we allow society to put us in places where we shouldn't be. I want to say this word that people don't like, and it's limits. We have to stop planning, strategizing, having goals outside of our limits. That's not to say not to dream big, but you
Mm,
got to know where your limits are. So for me, high functioning. I could literally be sitting here depressed right now and y'all would never even know it because it's just the mask of the disease. But in my alone time, when I am by myself, it is eating me alive in my head. There are
mm,
tons of voices that are telling me, LaKisha, you didn't get this done today, and so you're not worthy. You didn't do enough. So you actually need to work even harder tomorrow so that you can catch up. Like you never even know, number one. I think prior to the diagnoses, I maybe was not very empathetic to people and sympathetic. Now I am because when I work with clients and even when I come to my 9 to 5, I have people who, number one, I've had to have the conversation with, but number two, who I know that I can only work within limits. So for me, I can't have 15 clients at one time. I could probably only work with two or three, honestly, at one
mhm,
time, because there are times where I ain't right. I can't function. And
mm,
I could probably care less about your event. Not to be mean and say that, but just mentally, I'm not there. I'm tapped out.
yep,
So when I'm tapped out, I have to do the things that I have to do to get back together, which,
mm,
to be honest, Hayden, we really shouldn't even get to the tap out point. But
mhm,
sometimes we're just going and we don't. So, in order to work effectively with people, I have to say, okay, I know we're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. I cannot on today. And
mhm,
being okay with that and being confident. I know my limits. That doesn't mean I can't dream big and want to be this global event planner. I can still want to be that, but I can do it within reason, with
yep,
knowing my limits. That if rest is important and a priority for me, then I can't schedule meetings with a client who may be 12 hours ahead of me.
uh-huh,
We have to find that balance to meet in between. So a lot of times people think when you say limits, like, oh, well, you don't want me to be the best that I can be, and blah. No, I ain't saying that at all. I'm just saying you have to know yourself and know what your limits are. And when you talked about pivots, let's just talk about 2024 being a whole year of pivots, entire pivots. And you have to be able to look at the pivots as maybe a blessing in disguise. Like, what is it that I am, whoever you believe in, the audience, I believe in God. So, what is it that God is trying to tell me in this moment? What is it
mhm,
that I need to be seeing in this moment that I'm not seeing? What is it that I need to prioritize? Is it this thing that I'm just so damn near hard pressed on? Or is
mhm,
there another way? Is there something different that I can actually be doing
mhm.
to help me still achieve what I'm supposed to be achieving, but maybe not as much work?
Yeah, yes. I mean, what a beautiful question to ask yourself because it's like there's so many different paths to the same outcomes. And yeah, what would it be like to choose the path that actually feels really good to you?
Hmm.
To choose the path that feels a little bit more like easeful, the one that feels a little bit more suitable to where you're at in
Right.
life. And I think, one time I actually had my therapist tell me, she was like, yeah, when I was starting my business, she started her own private practice. She was like, when I'm starting, my husband told me, you need to make a business plan and you need to do this and that and the other thing. And she was like, I didn't want to do that. That didn't feel like me. She was like, I wasn't going to do it that way. And she didn't. And she's very successful.
Yes.
She did it in a way that felt good. And that didn't mean that she wasn't having moments of, marketing strategy or hiring help or asking for people that had other skill sets to come in.
Right.
Um, but she did it her way.
Mhm.
And I just think that's very freeing because,
Very.
especially with social media and everything, you
Yes.
go on there and you're getting so much unsolicited advice
Yes.
for how to live your life. And it's a lot of times you're like, but I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
And I think another piece of it that you touched on and that I think is so huge here when we're talking about like this, the difference between this like mindset culture or this
Hmm.
hustle culture thing and then the world in which we want to live in, which is more about sustainable achievement.
Right.
A huge part of that is remembering that we're not alone,
Right.
that we don't do things
Yep.
even when we're sitting and we feel like, I'm just working on my computer. Most likely, we're answering emails to other people who are
Hmm.
part of the network that make things happen.
Right.
We're working on a computer that was created by people, even when we feel
Yes.
like we're alone, we're not.
Right.
And so tapping into that resource
Hmm.
of support, whether
Right.
it's just personal, like I just need someone to listen to me, you know, rant and rave about something that just happened
Right.
today, or like, hey, I know I have this person in my circle who's really talented in a way that I'm
Mhm.
not, and it would be just pretty nice if I could pick their brain about it and not have to figure it all out on my own.
Right. Right. Simply asking. That's where we fail a lot of times. And I don't want to say fail in that way. You're right. We have these communities that we kind of created by accident. Mind Your Business was a pure accident for me. Honestly, it was not something that I intentionally set out. But when I look at my inner tribe, the people that I can text and say, hey, Hayden, I'm not feeling good today. This, and this, and you holding me accountable. You're not, oh, woo, woo, woo. Okay, LaKisha, what? It's like, okay, so you feel depressed. So what brought this on? When
Yep.
did like it's that level of accountability. And then to say to that tribe member, okay, so I have a launch coming up. And I think I'm missing this one piece that I seem to think that you are great at. Is there
Mhm.
any way that you can guide me through this process and or take this over for me? You
Yep.
can't tell me but yes or no. And yes, I may not like the no, but it's going to help me figure out what I need to do. And if you are truly the tribe member that I think you are, if you say no, it's going to be because it's not within your capacity.
Yeah.
You can't handle it right now, but you're going to make time in some way. Even if
Yeah.
it's like, I'm gonna create a Loom video and show you how to do this, or I'm gonna send you this in a Google Doc where you can follow step by step. Like it's all about those things. And I think sometimes in this whole productivity success, we forget the one word that I love that you keep saying is sustainability, but we
Mhm.
don't have the right people around us as well
Mhm.
who can help us reach the sustainable success that we
Yes.
deserve.
Yes, and who celebrate that
That one.
pursuit of success.
Yep.
People that, are speaking the same way that we're speaking,
Exactly.
are striving for the same things. Because one thing I really wanted to ask you about is kind of, you know, thinking more actionable ways or like boundaries we can set up when
Mhm.
we start to shift into this mindset and we start to shed some of the cultural messaging that doesn't work for us. How do we kind of stick with it when that
Mhm.
guilt, that feeling that maybe we're not doing enough, that, why aren't we capable as of doing as much as we used to be capable of when
Mhm.
we were really just, pushing ourselves. And when those thoughts kind of start to creep in and we get, those messages, whether implicitly or explicitly, that
Mhm.
taking that rest, finding that balance, and pursuing our goals in a different way is not actually okay.
So let me tell you, I that question, the series of questions are so like dead ass need to be talked about.
Yeah.
Because it's like it gets worse and worse, like to me every year. So first, we have to shift from the hustle culture
Hmm.
in order to have any sustainable achievement. You have to shift from the hustle culture. Number one, the first step to me is realizing that rest is not the enemy of success, honey. It's a prerequisite. Number one,
Hmm.
hustle glorifies exhaustion, but sustainable achievement really recognizes that. we're more creative, we're more focused, and we're effective when we are well rested. We
Mm.
have to do those things. To me, rest and recovery is where we can incubate these ideas and
Yep.
our resilience builds up, and you get really clear about what it is that you want to do, you need to do. And then you make this kind of mindset shift where you start to reframe rest as being productive, number one.
Mhm.
And you, it's because I want us to stop thinking like rest is a reward. Hell,
Mhm.
we need to, we got to, we have to rest. Over time, as you change your perspective, it's going to help you make choices that support like your goals and your long-term, well-being, which help leads into the boundary piece that you asked about. Like,
Mhm.
we have to know what our limits are first and what we need to thrive. What is it
Mhm.
that we need to thrive? And then to me, you have to clearly, I say clearly, and I'm going to say assertively communicate what those boundaries are.
Mhm.
You have to frame them as a way that for you to do your best work.
Mhm.
Like,
Yep.
instead of saying, oh, well, I can't work late, you can say, in order for me to deliver something to the best of my abilities and my limitation without any limitations, I got to stick to my work hours. I have to
Yep.
say that sometimes to new clients and honestly, I rarely take new clients because it's the whole I gotta talk to you about this over and over and over again thing that irritates me sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's like saying, these are my work hours. This is how I respond to email. This is how, like, all of those things. It's really like putting those things in place. And it's about like setting up these boundaries beforehand. I'll tell you something. I learned a new word not too long ago, and it's called micro boundaries. Really,
Mhm.
that you set in your day. Because what I just talked about is something that's just general. If
Mhm.
my hours are 9 to 5, boo, I ain't working late. That's it. That's it. But in my day, I can set up these little micro boundaries.
Mm.
And it's like putting focus time on my calendar
Yeah.
or making sure that I schedule a regular lunch break. Even when I work from home, even if I am working in the business and not at work, do I have these little focus times, these little rest periods? Like, do I go and cut the lights off or go into a dark room and take a 10-minute nap? Like, these micro boundaries to
Mm.
me really are helpful. I feel like on the guilt piece, and it's so huge for us as women. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, it's so huge for us. We really have to remind ourselves that boundaries aren't selfish. They
Mhm.
really are. They really are essential for number one, sustainable productivity,
Mhm.
which we just talked about that being a tool for sustainable success.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love what you were saying because you're also articulating. I like that idea of micro boundaries. I've not heard that. I'm going to use that. Um, you're talking about like the internal and external boundaries too. Like,
Hmm.
what? How do we have those boundaries with ourselves to remember like the way that we want to live our life and the
Right.
intention that we have with it?
Yes.
And then how do those boundaries, where do they start to impact others? Where do we have to communicate them with
Right.
others? And it's a dual process.
Right.
Sometimes the boundaries overlap, but sometimes it's a mix of both. And I just think that, again, yeah, coming back to that word intention and really
Yes.
understanding that this is an ongoing practice, that there are
Hmm.
so many things that kind of push in the opposite direction. And so it's your own kind of form of like, resistance
Right.
to the messaging that we get. And the more we do that and the more we build a community around us that's
Hmm.
like that, that values that, we build businesses that value that, we change the culture maybe in the business we work in, like the more we do that, the more the paradigm begins to shift.
Right.
And that's
Yes.
powerful. Like,
Yes.
that is so powerful. I think people, sometimes have so much on their plate and
Hmm.
they, have other people to care for or responsibilities that are just
Hmm.
genuinely very taxing and not
Right.
something that can be put aside.
That's true.
Those little like micro boundaries you talk about, that's its own form of kind of resistance and taking up this
Right.
stance for the world that we want to see become more um, common, more ubiquitous. And so even if that just means like my micro boundary is that, I have to make sure I'm drinking 8 ounces, of water first thing in the morning, and I'm going to
Yep.
drink more at lunch. So how do I do that? How do I make it happen? Where do I get, my water bottle and refill it? And like
Mm-hmm.
just even taking it down to these little, like, we need to stand up sometimes, we need to
Yep.
eat some food, we need to like, take care of the baseline, and so that everything can build off of that.
That's true. I love that you said that. I actually was talking with a mom who is coming into the Mind Your Business community. And she mentioned the word, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. And she was like, yeah, I had to set that up with my kids. Now she doesn't have, they're not super small,
Uh-huh.
but they are small enough where it's always the mommy, look, mommy, look. I think they're like 5 or 6. And so we were having just a conversation, and she was like, pardon me, one moment. And she said, okay, mommy says that she needs 15 minutes of uninterrupted time so that she can talk to Miss LaKisha. Remember that? And the little girl was like, yes, mommy. And she said, okay, so our clock starts now. Now I want you to go, and they have one of those like stage clocks in their house, and it's in a central room. And she said, now go to that clock and set 15 minutes on there. And when it buzzes, either mommy will be done, or that's a clue for mommy to wrap up. And she said,
Mhm.
yes, ma'am. And I was like literally, I was blown away. Cause I'm
Yep.
like, we don't even do that for our damn self. But
Mhm.
here it is. She set up a system with
Mhm.
children, Hayden, to say, mommy needs 15 minutes. She said, oh,
Mhm.
I do that all the time. She said, you know how even at this age, you can't even go in the bathroom by yourself?
Mhm.
It's still at this age. Mommy's going into the bathroom for 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, mommy will be done.
Yep.
Then whatever it is. And so I'm like, I'm finna steal your word, number one, girl. She was like, girl, I didn't make the word up. I found it. I saw that somewhere. I said, I'm about to steal that, and I am going to turn that concept into a whole curriculum, because we do not do that with ourselves. We go to work,
Yeah.
we start our businesses, and there is no time set in, like you said, to drink water. There's no time to do anything. My Apple Watch tells me when to stand up. I'm working, working, working. I ain't paying no attention.
Yep.
But we have to start doing those things for ourselves. And I love that you said the boundaries really start with us. What
Yeah.
are you doing to yourself that could be causing you some issues? And now you allow other people to do it too, because you do it.
Mhm. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Because also, what a beautiful thing to teach a kid,
Yes.
because then that's an internal thing that she's kind of giving her kids and creating inside of themselves, is this concept of limits. And
Yes.
that everything has its little
Hmm.
pocket and its
Yep.
moment. And we can be flexible with that as we get older, especially too. Okay, I said, I'm going to do this for an hour. I'm really in the flow. Let me check in. Is it best for me to keep going? Does that feel okay? Okay, yeah,
Yes.
I'll keep going, but I'm going to go for another 30 and then I'm going to check in again,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And I wonder for anybody, that feels like they're really stuck in a cycle of overwork, or
Hmm.
maybe they're in a phase of burnout right now in their life, what would be your first step you would suggest for helping them realign their priorities and kind of step into everything that we've talked about today?
Oh, I love this question, because I feel like we all get there at some point.
Hmm.
Either it's every month, every quarter. Like, just think about when we're launching something, or we're doing something new.
Yeah.
For me, and what I'd like to tell people is the first step is to pause and reflect. Like, what the hell am I doing? Does what I'm doing make sense? It is if again, you talked about it so clearly, is it lining up with my values, my priorities, and the goals that I say I want to achieve? Because
Mm,
think about overwork. It often stems from losing sight of the bigger picture.
hmm.
So
Yep.
you have to take time to clarify again, what are my core values and goals? What truly matters to me? And then you take an audit of what your current commitments are and compare them against these priorities. Do they align?
Yes.
Am I being intentional? And if
Yes.
not, then you have to identify like what's one small thing you can do? One small change you can make. Is it like delegating a task? Is
Hmm.
it scheduling downtime? Like,
Yep.
what is the thing that I can do right now, here today to start? So I feel like the key is to start small and then build your momentum, like realigning priorities, isn't just about flipping your life overnight. Like God, it took some of us forever to get to this place where we're at. And we're still not perfect at it. We still flub up and miss things. But it's really about taking these intentional incremental steps toward like your level of balance and
Yeah.
fulfillment.
Yes. Yes. I love that. That is such a good point and like guidepost. And I think, sometimes it can really be just stepping back and being like, what is the biggest bang for my buck right now? Like, is there a small win? Like, man, I love the dishes for a small win because I'm like, the house is a
Yes.
mess. It's probably not even that messy. And I'm like, but the dishes when they're done, I'm like, that makes me feel like I'm on top of
Right.
things. Usually it takes like 5 minutes. And I got a
Hmm.
dishwasher, so I can just put a bunch of stuff in there too. Like,
Right.
and that sometimes helps get the ball rolling of, okay,
Right.
all
Right.
right, I got one thing. That's feeling pretty good.
Hmm.
So, what's next? And just taking it one step at a time. And I think that's a real
Yep.
constant kind of coming home and like remembering practice of,
Right.
you know, how is the way that I view success? How do I view success? What does that look like for me?
Right.
Remembering that sustainability piece and knowing that we can't do everything all of the time. And we sure as hell cannot do the things that we feel like we're constantly getting the message that we should be doing.
Right.
And
Right.
so if we just step back, take a breath and say, what's the biggest bang for my buck? And what is the thing that
Exactly.
really matters to
Yep.
me? And can I do that right now?
Exactly. I love that. And I also want to say too, like, just because you can doesn't mean you have to. And
Yes.
that is what I have had to say to myself this year. So as an event planner, quite naturally, my solution to everything. Oh, I want to launch this membership. Oh, well, do a launch event. Oh, I'm passionate about men and mental health. Oh, do an event. Well, girlfriend, I had to tell myself this year, no ma'am. I'm gonna need you to sit down because just because you know how doesn't mean you have to. I
Mm,
literally canceled a men's mental health event again. Doesn't align with my mission, my values, or any of that. Not that I don't care about men, not that,
yep.
but my audience are women entrepreneurs. So what was I doing? And why again? So it literally, I was feeling stressed out. I was like, this is not coming together. No one is buying tickets. It just seems like there's no traction. It was hard to get the content to my social media manager. It just seemed like it was just like this pulling. And I had to do that very thing. I was like, okay, sit your ass down. Figure out what's going on. What's
Yes.
happening here? And that's where I looked at it and I was like, this is not in alignment with my values and my goals. My goals is not necessarily to not include men, don't get me wrong, but my audience are women. I speak to women. So even when I looked at the content that I was trying to create for this event, it was all female based, talking to men. And I had to say, no, that's not it. Mm-mm. What I will do though is in this huge conference that I do every year in May, I will incorporate some sessions for men. You
Yeah.
don't need to create a whole damn event, Hayden. No. And
Yep.
when I decided to not do it, it was like the heavens opened up. Like I felt so much better.
Yeah.
And the guilt that I did feel about getting speakers hyped and other people hyped who weren't helping me promote, by the way, it didn't last that long because it felt good for me.
Yeah. Oh, oh my gosh. Just because you can doesn't mean you have to. I love that. What an amazing conversation we've had. I appreciate
Yes.
having you so much. I really want my audience to know where to find you. Where can they get in contact and keep up with you?
Thank you so much for having me. So I like to play on Instagram.
Hmm.
I am a Gen X, but I like Instagram. I don't like Facebook. But on all platforms, you can find me at LaKisha M. Mosley, my website, LaKishaMosley.com. And pretty soon, Mind Your Business will be officially launched. This thing has been like a year and a half in the making. And that web address is mindyourbusiness.space.
Nice. Awesome. So exciting. And
Yes.
do you do local events? Are they in Texas? Where do you do your
Yes. So I do one huge event a year, and it's called My Mind is My Business. It's normally in May. Next year it'll be May 16th and 17th.
nice?
It's a huge mental health conference for women entrepreneurs, but it's also inclusive to even if you're not in business. It's just women in general, and we
Hmm.
talk about things. Most of the content is around entrepreneurship or C-suite level. Like if you are in this high power position where stress seems to really be hitting you, we talk about how to prioritize your mental health while still achieving success. It
Yep.
should not be one or the other. So I do that. And then I do just smaller, like virtual events. So virtual is really my jam. I love virtual events as well. And so I do those once a quarter, and it's normally based off of a theme. Again, geared toward women, but I do those 4 times a year.
Beautiful. Well, so amazing to have you. Thank you so
Thank
much. I'll have
you.
all her stuff linked in the description below, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.